Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Texte's another podcast. Today we have very special guest with us. She is Mashal Waqar and she is born in Saudia and now she is operating her company from UAE, which is a social media company, the Tempest. She was among her name was listed in 30 under 30 Middle East Forbes list, as well as she received Woman of the Year award in UAE. So, Michelle, can you introduce yourself first, and then I welcome you wholeheartedly to the Texas podcast, and thank you so much for sparing out time from your busy schedule for this podcast.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Mashal. I run a women's media company called the Tempest. And we've got one mission, which is to amplify the voices of women, right? Because the media landscape is very messy as it is, but most women's media companies are actually owned and run by men. So we want to change that. We want to hand the mic back to women, where regardless of your background, your experiences, we want to bring forward authentic storytelling. So we cover everything from life and love to relationships to health, news, tech, science, and finance. And yeah, we've got millions of readers around the world, and I am the co-founder and COO of the company. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the way, from where this idea came from and how you people started this company, before going for your quality in life, I want to know that how you started this company.
So I didn't start it, actually. My co-founder started it, and Leila, she started it in 2016, and she's really the one who had this driving force behind this mission and this vision. A couple of months after the Tempest had launched, I read an article. It was on Facebook. I think this is the summer of 2016. So I read the article on Facebook, and kind of, when you read an article and you love it so much and you're like, I want to read more content, that's what happened to me. And it was the first time I felt like I read an article where I felt like I belonged. And it had such a strong story to it. So I started reading article after article after article. And then 3 to 4 hours later, I'm like, oh my God, I love this company. I love their content. I love their mission. I want to join them in whatever capacity I can. And I've always loved writing, but I have a tech background. So actually, I don't have anything to do with media. So I joined as a guest contributor, worked my way up to becoming an editorial fellowship program, which is the mentoring program that we host. So I did that. And then in a couple of months, I worked to become a crucial part of the company by building tools and platforms and different things for them. And a couple of months after, Leila asked me to join as a co-founder. So that's how I joined the company. And it was very different. I never thought I would be. Yeah, I never thought I would be running a company, but I think it was just, I don't know. I still can't believe it sometimes.
So by the way, how you keep yourself passionate about, like, every day you get up, and how you keep yourself motivated? Like, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's tough. It's really tough because I think being motivated is, like, running a company is really hard. I think doing anything that you're really passionate about is hard because, you don't always have all the answers. And when you run a company that's growing, the problem is there's a lot of people that are depending on you and that have expectations, and there's just so much on your head. So there are times where you will burn out, and when you burn out and when, you feel like there's different phases, I guess, right? But I think what's worked for me is I've kind of had different phases where sometimes, I'm so stressed out, and I've kind of had my health be very affected because of how much I was working. So I had to learn how to balance both, because without that, I just would not be able to kind of continue running. But how do I keep myself motivated? It's different things. Honestly, the first thing is I remind myself why I started. Like, what was it about the Tempest that really made me want to join the company? And it was the mission of empowering women, amplifying their voices. And I remind myself that this isn't about me or my team or the people in the company. It's about the people reading the pieces. It's about everyone else who hasn't read The Tempest, right? And I feel like it is my responsibility to do my best to ensure this platform reaches as many people as it can. That's one. Other things, when I'm feeling really, and I struggle with mental health. Like I've faced, both depression and anxiety. And I feel like one thing that helps me is I don't try to pretend to be happy, to be honest. Like if I'm not feeling my best, it's okay. I give myself space and room to feel and experience my emotions. I don't try to run away from it, because I think when I can experience it, that's the only way I can kind of get past it. So I try to do that, but then other things are sometimes, I'm going to try and just get one thing done. Yeah. Like I think sometimes if you're feeling really like, when things feel like they're really tough, try to do just one thing. And make it be something easy that you can easily do. Because once you get into a flow, like you're going to do one thing and then you can do the next. I feel like that helps sometimes. But yeah, having a supportive community helps a lot as well. Like you have to build a community around you where you have a safe space to talk about what you're going through, to talk about your experiences. And I think these are all important things. And one, which I will say, if you have access to something like therapy, please try and like, I'm a big advocate of that. Like if you can afford therapy, by all means, please do, because it's a big taboo, but I think it's past time we get past this whole, hoo-ha around it.
Yeah. By the way, when it comes to lockdown everywhere across the globe, how much this quarantine affected your business and your personal life? How much your personal life has been changed? What was it prior to quarantine and what it is now?
It actually affected us a lot, because our business side of things is advertising and B2B. And because of COVID, this was supposed to be one of our best quarters. But because of COVID, a lot of companies had their media budgets be cut down. So it affected us quite a bit. And that was tough. I think the first month, I couldn't believe this was happening, because, it's something that wasn't in my control. It wasn't in anybody else's control. But I could kind of slowly see the world changing around me, where people are losing jobs and companies are kind of suffering and they're getting affected. And you could see the decline like week by week, day by day. So I don't think anybody was ready for it. We weren't either. But in the first month, I'll be honest, like it was really tough to process everything. And just different ways that I started coping. Like my whole body clock changed. Like my sleep cycle got so affected because of how stressed I was. And I started looking into it, and I realized it's very normal for this to happen. So if you feel like you can't sleep, it's because of the chronic stress and just the background chaos that's going on. So that affected us quite a bit. And how did we kind of, what did we do? We realized we have to change what we're doing. And we need to kind of change the way we're working, because we need to continue going on. And you're running a company, you have to think of something fast, and you need to do it in a way that will work. So we changed our business model a little bit, and we sort of pivoted.
You need to adopt,
Yeah, so we did that. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what we did, because this is a project we're launching next week. But basically, we've sort of changed our revenue model and our business model.
I understand,
Yeah, but we changed it up in a way where we're not dependent on other companies.
That's the best thing. Like, everyone needs to learn from you that. Like everyone needs to learn, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are thinking like, now there is no business, everything has been closed. When it comes to travel and tourism companies, no one is traveling nowadays. But the only thing they can do is they can adopt, because COVID is a reality, and we need to accept it, and we need to change accordingly. Only then we will be able to survive in the market. I think this is something which is really important, and people need to learn from you.
It's
By
very
the way,
important.
what is
it's
COVID
very important.
according to you?
What is what?
What is COVID-19 or coronavirus according to you? Like how you are looking at this COVID-19, and when do you think, like everyone has a prediction that this will be the time when things will be back to normal, business, it will be business as usual. What's how you are looking at that?
I think normal, our definition of normal is going to change. The world is not going to go back to how it used to be. It cannot go back to how it used to be. we're seeing repercussions in terms of businesses, companies, and the economy, and everyday spending as well. Even if you look at stocks, I mean, Warren Buffett recently, he sold his equity in all the airlines that he had invested in. So you already know that the industry it's been affected quite a bit. What do I predict? I think this is the first time in my life where I've seen technology be used to the point that it is because there's no other choice. Before people, how many times have you seen people around you think, oh, wow, I'm excited for a webinar? Like how many times? Like I haven't had any of my friends watch webinars.
Probably no one. Yeah, probably no one.
So everyone's online.
You don't have any other option.
Exactly. All the major events have been canceled. Everything's been sort of, pushed to next year. And I think that's one. So there's no, even if you think things are going to open up, they're like, things are not going to change. I mean, they're changing, but I think don't expect the rest of the year to look anything like the beginning of the year. There's no way that's going to happen. We can move past this though. I'm not saying we can't, but it's going to take time and we should all be prepared. With the travel industry, for example, I mean, you have to pivot. I've seen a lot of people become really creative with how and what they're doing. So some folks have been going on to Airbnb and hosting online sessions of their experiences. I've been seeing people sign up for that in the US and in different markets. And so I think you have no choice but to kind of go online. And in terms of the effects, I think from what I'm looking at the data. I don't have any personal opinions in terms of how serious it is, because I think like in Dubai, we had a lockdown and I started self-isolating way before that. So end of February, I had started self-isolating because I knew this was serious. And I was looking at the articles and the data and it was very scary. So I started doing that. So I didn't step out for like 2.5 months almost. And then Dubai went into a lockdown and now we have a curfew for Ramadan. But the truth is like, it's still like, it doesn't mean we can just kind of go out. You have to take your precautions. You have to take care of yourself. That's your responsibility. So I think everything's just sort of changed. And I see a lot of different ways that people are being creative with what they're doing, because you don't have a choice. You can either, in the next couple of months, they're predicting a very high percentage of companies that will shut down. Some companies have completely stopped operating in order to save costs as well, right? So I think everyone's trying to cope in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you just mentioned that there will be, after even COVID, will be like COVID is not going anywhere because it's a virus, it will remain. Only we will go to the next stage when we are going to have a vaccine. So until and unless we don't have a vaccine,
Yeah.
we need to accept this reality and we need to look forward that how we are going to live in parallel to this COVID-19 thing. So I think that's something that's really important for all the people to understand, and they need to pivot as well when it comes to companies. By the way, what you recommend to the people, how they can still remain positive and productive during this time of crisis? Because most of the people are feeling depressed because when it comes to entrepreneurs, their business models, like their existing business models are not generating them money anymore. So people are feeling depressed. What you recommend to those people? Not just entrepreneurs. It's for all the general audience.
Yeah, this is for everybody. Yeah, this is for everybody because we're all affected, regardless of whether you run a company or not. I think first of all, understand that you feeling sad and lonely or feeling isolated is very normal, right? Because everyone is feeling that way around the world, right? You're not alone. I think that's the first thing. We're all in this together. We've all been affected in one way or the other. Maybe some people have not been as affected financially, but there's some repercussion you're going to see in whatever you're doing. There's no way you haven't been able to not really experience this. A couple of things that have helped me personally, and I don't want to speak for everybody because maybe it might not work for you, but this is what worked for me, right? So I am cautious of that. One, I've been doing this guided meditation, and that's been helping me a lot. I think it kind of is helping me clear my mind and focus, and I've been able to do that. So that's been helping me in the last 2 weeks. The other thing is I think reaching out to friends and family, there were some times where I didn't feel like reaching out to folks, but writing down my thoughts really helped. And I'm a big fan of journaling. So that's been helping me a lot, like, journaling and writing my thoughts, and I'm getting time to think. I think sometimes we've been so busy, and I've been so busy in like action mode where it's like do. But what's helped me is just to take a step back and to think in a way where, I'm thinking about a lot of different things, about my opinions, about decisions, about how to move forward. And I think just kind of also thinking about what you want to do with your own life. I think that's not just professional, just personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think this is the positive side of COVID, that we all are in quarantine nowadays, and it's time to think about yourself. It's time to explore yourself. I think being a person is something which is really important to understand yourself. Only then you will be able to do things in a better way. So I think it's a good time, and
Absolutely.
we also got time to engage with our families. Like we are still, by the way, we are living in an era that where we are still we're still connected through different
Yeah.
social mediums. We
Yeah.
are reading everything. We're connected to the world. Yeah, it's just physical distant. Like we are physically distancing.
It's
It's not socially
find what
distancing.
I would
So
say
I think,
find what works for you, because like, I mean, I enjoy arts and culture. So I've been trying to find events with more of, the arts community, and conversations about culture and specifics in that. Find what works for you and find out what makes you feel better, right? Whether it's watching TV shows, because I watched a lot of Netflix in the last 2 months, like more than I ever have probably in my life. And I've been watching a lot, rewatching stuff. I've been reading older books that I, just used to read and love. And I think find what works best for you and find what you're enjoying. Like I've made so much of food in the last couple of months. It's insane. I shouldn't say insane, but I don't think I've made as much food, honestly. And it's just because that was making me feel better. So that's what I was doing. So find whatever works for you. And I think the other thing, and I really want to talk about this, is that online during the first month when COVID had broken out, everyone kept saying, be productive, be this, be that, be happy. And sometimes you can't feel happy. You just don't. Right. And I think I was kind of getting very tired of looking at social media, because it's toxic positivity, where every time I opened my account, people were posting about great things and I wasn't feeling great. So I didn't force myself to feel. I'm not saying I think I just kind of had this phase and I let myself feel that way because I felt like I just don't know what to do. So it's okay to kind of, just let things be. Of course, there's, find ways where you don't feel as isolated, because that can be dangerous at times. And I think find your friends or find a support system. That's really important, to feel connected in some way or the other.
yeah, I think I was also talking to a lot of different people across the globe, and people were telling me that people find different things to stay positive, to keep themselves busy. Like people who never cooked before, they are cooking nowadays. They spend time in
Everyone's
kitchen.
making bread.
Yeah, everyone is making different things nowadays, but they never did before. So I think it's we need to look this time in a positive way. Yeah. And by the way, what is the condition of COVID when it comes to UAE? How people are taking the lockdown seriously, or they are still stepping out? What's happening over there?
So I've only been out 2 times. And I think I was pleasantly surprised. People so if you don't wear a mask, you get a fine, and you have to wear gloves as well when you enter these stores. So that's important. But the mask is mandatory for everybody. So pleasantly surprised. I haven't seen crowded places so far. People are social distancing. A lot of people I know are also staying at home. So that's great, because what happened was before the lockdown, it was a lot more serious. But I think now people have understood just how dangerous it is. People are taking precautions on their own, but also by the government. Like, you cannot step out from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So there's laws in particular. And they're doing a lot of testing from what I understand. I think they've had a lot of recoveries. And so I think here we're still better versus other countries who are not taking as much precautions, I guess, or where people aren't taking
Because
precautions.
laws are a
That's
bit
what I've been
strict
able
over
to.
there. Yeah, people have to follow the laws when it comes to UAE and yeah, when it comes to
Yeah,
developing.
yeah. And I think the lockdown was great. Honestly, like it was really tough to go through, but it was a 24/7 lockdown where you could only step out if you had a government permit. You could get it online in a few minutes. It was easy to get, but you had to be very specific. So it was very organized. And I think because of that, suddenly the rates dropped in terms of people getting affected because no one was stepping out. And it's the first time this has happened. So I think Dubai has been pretty proactive, and Abu Dhabi as well in this aspect.
That's great. By the way, there is one more thing that when there is a complete lockdown in Dubai, like there are people who are the daily wages and they are the most vulnerable in this crisis. So
Mm-hmm.
how people are surviving, what government is doing to help those kind of people?
So
What's happening?
the government has announced a bunch of different packages, and they're working with the banks on relief packages. So that's been happening. Um, but the sad reality is that, and I think the government has a bunch of different initiatives that they're doing to help. But I think the sad reality is that companies are affected, and so jobs are being, people are losing jobs. I read an
Yeah.
article day before yesterday about how 150,000 Indians are going to be flying back because they've lost their jobs, and 40,000 Pakistanis. So I think that's a big loss. Kareem is also they're going to be cutting down 30% of their workforce, I believe. Uber Eats, for example, in Saudi has also they've closed operations, and so I think everyone's being affected, and people are losing jobs. And I think it's not just restricted to the Gulf. This is going to happen everywhere, and already seeing it happen in other
Yeah,
regions as well.
across the globe, yeah.
Yeah. So
So
that's a
by the way,
sad reality.
when it comes to these kind of things, like you have to go grocery, you have to go to take out the necessary things. So it's really important. By the way, what people are most of the people are doing over there? Are they using delivery services or what?
Delivery for groceries. Most
Okay.
people are getting stuff delivered, and there are good options that people can use. So they've been doing that. And then the other thing is there's also smaller shops around who are delivering these things. So if they're either using the bigger apps
Wow.
like Carrefour or Lulu or these bigger ones, or they call up the stores that are closer to them. And they've got a bunch of different chains. And
This
some
way they will
people,
be able to sustain their employees. Like, yeah, this
yeah,
is
which
gonna.
is good. I'm a proponent of support your local community, support the people around you, buy from obviously the local vendors and the chains here. I'm a big supporter of that. I think we all as a community need to be. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. By the way, you are also a mentor at SeedStar, if I'm not wrong. So,
At
by the way, when it comes
TechStars Startup Weekend.
to
Yeah.
TechStar, yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? That how you are mentoring, what kind of startups you are mentoring over there, and what you suggest to startups in Pakistan? That there are a lot of people, specifically when it comes to youth, they want to start their own ventures. What is the necessary thing an entrepreneur need to have? Like they need to be passionate about, and like people have ideas, how they can start working on those ideas. What you suggest to them?
So I am a mentor at a bunch of different organizations for startups, and I also mentor individuals like startup founders and entrepreneurs and whatnot during whenever I have time. And I do dedicate a number of hours every month for mentoring alone and advising startups. So I think right now online there's a bunch of amazing resources. I've spoken about them. I often post about them on my socials as well. Um, but to me, I look at the best of the best, right? So you look at Y Combinator, which is kind of like the Stanford of startups, if you want to call it that. They've had a lot of success stories. Y Combinator has Startup School, which has A to Z. They've got a weekly program that's online that you can actually study from. There's TechStars. They've got an online playbook for how from your idea stage to conceptualizing it to running it every single step of the way. Um, on a startup. Understanding understand idea, scale, because what is a startup? It's something that's scaling, right? You're basically solving a problem that a lot of people have, or you're solving a growing problem. And so understand what it means and then work on it. I feel like the more people that you have to try, not because you want to succeed, but I don't think you should be afraid of failing. Like, I think that's, 90% of startups fail, or 70% potential. I feel like they can change the world. And the other thing is, we're seeing a lot of activity in Southeast Asia with startups, and a lot of investors are beginning to notice and really start investing. Like, India has these are incredible regions to look at in terms of investment, and in terms of look at what they're doing. The way the Indian startup ecosystem has been able to be developed is amazing, because a lot of San Francisco funds are actually investing into Indian startups now. And I think the same thing is definitely possible with Pakistan as well, where you have to look at scale, look at digitization, look at what is a problem that not just people in the city, but maybe people in smaller cities or towns are facing. You really have to do your homework and figure out what can you do to solve this problem. There is so much of potential right now, because there are just so many people in Pakistan. Like, how can there not be problems, right? So I feel like there's just so many things you can do. There's so many industries you can think of.
Every single problem is an opportunity for an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But it's all about execution of this. It's all about execution. And by the way, how much would you think, according to you, that how much a mentor matters for a startup? Like, how mentor can help startups? Like, most of the time, I want to share something with you, that most of the time it happens in Pakistan, specifically with a country like Pakistan. The mentors we have, most of the time, they don't have any entrepreneurial experience. They were employed throughout their life, and they are mentoring startups now. Most of the mentors who are mentoring, they don't have any entrepreneurial experience. So what according to you is the role of mentor for a startup? Yeah,
that's a big question. And I have opinions about people who haven't run startups who give advice, because I understand it happens, but I'm not a fan of it. I think maybe they've scaled. It really depends on what you're trying to do, because, sometimes I think it just depends on what you're looking for. Be particular and careful with your mentors, and look at what they've achieved. Okay. It's not so much about, like, it's great when people take out time, and I think it's important to get as many perspectives as you can sometimes. But it really depends on what phase you're in and what you're doing. Like, I'm a big fan of understand when you're spending time with, and with mentors, understand their background. If they've worked in corporate, that's fine. But, like, what is the benefit you're getting by getting that time from them, right? Because mentoring takes time and energy, right? You want to make sure it's productive for you and for them. So think about, for example, if they've got experience in an industry, maybe they know how to get your foot through the door, right? Maybe they can open up access to you in corporates. A lot of startups sometimes need to partner with corporates as clients, as partners, as whatever project, right? So think about what can the mentor do for you, and then talk to them, and then kind of,
because
make the most of them.
It's a startup choice that who will be the mentor, and what the people are looking for. Startup needs to understand this. That you mean that they need to understand that what they are looking for.
Yeah. And then the other thing is also, there are incubators in Pakistan, from what I understand. There's Nest.io, there's Sasha.
They are doing great, and they have a few success stories. Like
right. They've got amazing success stories, and I think this is a very interesting time to be in Pakistan right now from a startup perspective. But be careful with the mentors, I think. And the other thing is, I don't think there's two things. One, it's great to learn from mentors in the region. Sometimes you also want to look at people who have done it really well in another region, right? So think about, like, I'll give you one example. Like, these two founders, I think this is Pinterest. They would go to stores and open up their website in the Apple stores on the laptops, okay? And so when people would walk into the store, they would see, oh, this is a cool website. So when it comes to user acquisition, there are so many different creative ways that you can learn from people in different regions and maybe do that same thing here. You have to be obviously like cautious of which region you're in. You know, not everything that's worked in a different region will work for you, but at the same time, learn from people who've done it. Right now, we're at a time where there are so many amazing people sharing their experiences online. And I think there's, you know, make the most of it if you can. But also when it comes to people in Pakistan, like, you know, maybe, like, again, with these mentors, if you want to call it that, like, I think take advice, but remember that you're the decision maker. If you don't think it's going to work, don't do it. Like, you're the driving force. You're the one who's going to be accountable if it's your company.
I ask you this question because you are a successful entrepreneur, and they asked me to ask you this question about specifically when it comes to mentorship. By the way, there is one more thing, that when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's a journey on a bumpy road. So you face hardships during this journey. Like, what is the biggest hardship you have faced through in your journey? Can you share that? Yeah.
Which one should I start with? There's so many.
There's so many things, every entrepreneurial journey has.
Yeah, it's been tough. I guess one of the toughest times was a couple of years ago when I was struggling financially and we weren't taking salaries in the company. So I was in a tough phase where I actually didn't know we would go into a period where we wouldn't have to take salaries, but we stopped taking salaries at one point. And I didn't have money, and I've been financially independent for a very long time. Like, that was always my biggest goal in university, was I want to get work experience so that I can pay my own bills and I can be financially independent. And there came a time where I was like, I didn't have money to pay rent, and I was just so stressed out about what I was going to do. And it was one of the toughest phases because I would come home, I would sit in my apartment and I would cry thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I really have no answer right now. That was a really tough phase, I think. And it was one of the lowest points, I think, just of my startup journey, where I felt so burnt out. I felt like nothing was going right. Every door felt like it was shutting down. And it just felt like we were trying to do this amazing thing. But for some reason, anytime other companies were involved, we just weren't getting the support that we thought we would get. So that was tough. The other one was, so this is when I was struggling with my mental health and I just didn't think I could go on. And I think that was a personal journey, but it took a very heavy toll on me. These are the two phases, I think, that have been really, really tough.
Yeah, I think it's really tough, and all the entrepreneurs need to understand who are watching this, that when it comes to entrepreneurship, like, the consistency is something which is really important, and you never have to quit. If you are not going to quit, you are going to succeed one day, because again, the word entrepreneurship is really fancy, but the journey is really full of sweat and tears. So you need to stay consistent.
It is. And I think the other thing is also, you know, Osama, I really want people to understand there's nothing wrong in shutting down your company. There is so much of shame that we associate with shutting down the company and with failure. And I think if at some point you realize this is not going to work, it's totally okay to shut down a company. It takes a lot of courage to do that. So if you decide to do that, there's no shame in it. Most successful founders have had at least 2 failed startups before they have their successful one, you know? So I think we need to stop the stigma, and we need to stop this whole feeling ashamed of it. But at the same time, also, you know, I'm not saying the first time something doesn't work, you shut down your company. Then this is not meant for you. Because you need guts and you need a lot of determination and you need to be resilient as hell. Like, the number of times I just, you know, it's taken me so long to be able to be even taken seriously. Like, people wouldn't respect what I was saying just because of my age and because of how I looked. Because they were like, you know, you don't seem like you're running a big company, or you could run a company with a big audience. It was the weirdest experience. So it, like, different struggles and challenges, but you're gonna hear a lot of no's, and sometimes you hear yeses, which is great. But if you hear no's, like, that's something I feel like I'm used to hearing a lot of no's. So you just have to work with it.
Yeah, actually, I think this is something which is really important to understand, that if you came to a point where you have no clarity about your business, you can shut down it. You can shut it down and move on to something which you believe in. Like, I think this is something which startups need to understand. And if something is not working, there's nothing bad in quitting one thing and starting something else. Yeah.
But I would say take time to think before you shut down, and take time before you move on to the next thing. Learn from the mistakes. Sometimes it's not about how much you believe in it. Sometimes it's about the market. Sometimes it's about vendors. Sometimes it's about something that has nothing to do with your belief, right? So there's so many different factors that make a startup successful. Sometimes it's also the timing. Maybe you're too early or too late. Maybe, there's so many different things that come into play. So it's not always about your belief, and that's the frustrating part, because sometimes it could be something that you have no control over, and that's okay.
Yeah. And by the way, you just talked about mistake. Like, there are a lot of people who talk about mistake when it comes to entrepreneurship or startups.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's okay to do a mistake. What's your take on that? Like, I think it's okay to do a mistake, and you need to learn from that mistake, and you need to move on. What's your take on that? Can you tell
100%.
a little bit about that?
I
Yeah,
completely
because
agree
most
with
of the
you.
people they ask that how to avoid doing a mistake. Like, can you avoid doing a
Don't
mistake
avoid
because it's
it.
something unintentional?
I think of things as experiments, okay? So you run an experiment, it'll work or it won't work. But whatever happens, you have data, right? And that data is useful. So then you learn from that data, and then you try another experiment. Think of yourself like a hacker, right? Or a scientist, if you want to call it that. Like, you're figuring out the solution in different aspects, right? So don't be afraid to make mistakes. In fact, I would encourage it. Just don't make the same mistake over and over, because then that means you're not really learning anything. So that's my take. Don't be afraid of it. And it takes time to feel comfortable enough to admit to making mistakes. But I think, why are you looking at it from the perspective of it's a mistake? Think about it, like I said, experiments. That's the easiest way to think about it.
Yeah. So, because when it comes to life, we have to learn throughout our life. Like, you should be always open to learning, and
Mm-hmm.
mistake is one of
Yeah.
the thing. It makes you learn different things. By the way, when it comes to traveling, like, do you love traveling? Because that's my last question. We are gonna end the podcast on that.
I love visiting new places. I hate the flying part and the packing part and the being on the, I don't mind sitting on the plane, but it's just the whole airport to I'm a very anxious traveler, and I've had so many bad experiences at airports that I'm a little bit afraid when I travel. I'm very nervous and anxious, and I just have a lot of anxiety. But yes, I enjoy visiting places. Yeah.
Which is that city which you visited before and you want to visit that city again? Yeah. Which is that city? Which city you have visited before and you want to visit that again? And you also recommend others that city is a must visit.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I love Dubai. Honestly, I love here because I love the city so much. It's my favorite city in the world, and I have been to so many different places, but this city is just home for me. I also I think Dubai for me wins it. Like, I think it's so safe. It is incredible in terms of there's different spaces. Like there's the artistic side, there's the indie side, there's the cultural aspect, and there's so much the UAE has, even whether you're in Sharjah, whether you're in, again, there's something for everybody, right? A city that can I talk about a city I did not like? Maybe that's an easier question. Okay, so I visited New York City a few years ago, and it was a dream city in my head. I thought, you know what? Everyone talks about New York. I want to visit it. I feel like I've always wanted to visit it. So I went there, and it was the worst experience I've ever had. Everyone, people just felt like they were it was not the greatest experience. So.
What was that in that city which makes you feel like it's not a good city?
I don't know about good, maybe just different and how comfortable I am. So in New York, there were a couple of people. There were a few racist instances. that I had, and my co-founder wears a hijab, and so people were just, they kept staring at us for some reason on the subway. And there were some mean comments a few people said to us while we were walking on the streets. We were just minding our own business. It's not even like we were intruding in somebody else's space, but people were actually, they just said some really nasty things to us. And that was not nice. I feel like it's a very fast city, but it's also like, I felt like I didn't really feel safe and at home. And I think that if a place feels like home to me, then I'm okay with it. But in terms of places to visit, I think San Francisco is amazing. I think it is, if you're in the startup ecosystem, like to me, exploring that was just incredible. But I've also heard, I feel like it was amazing for me to experience, just kind of to be able to kind of explore. Yeah, that was a really nice one too. Yeah.
By the way, Mashal, thank you so much for sparing out time for Texte's podcast, and it was an amazing discussion with you. To knowing like audience came to know more about you, that who you are, how you started, and like all of that. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
It was fun. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good one then.
And for the audience, we will be back with the next podcast very soon. We are going to announce that on our social media. Stay tuned. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz. Take care. Bye. Bye.